Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to a Wolfram language design review, part of our cycle for version 14.1. Today we have an interesting topic. I'm not sure we've talked about in live stream before. We call it percent modernization. So
we did actually do a live stream week or 2 weeks ago.
oh my gosh, okay,
A week
fine.
ago, yeah.
My memory is even more pathetic than I thought. Okay.
Sorry, not trying to call that out.
But all right, well, good. Well, all right, let's launch here then. So where
Okay, so
oh, that's
for
right. I
the sake
remember
of
we did a live stream where Jason wasn't here, and that was yes. Okay, I'm remembering now. Okay,
and now
go
Jason
for it.
is here as well.
Yep. Hi, guys.
Good.
So okay, for the sake of the live stream and just to kind of get everyone on the same page, we have this feature of percents where you can reverse the previous output. So I evaluate this, I then type percent plus, I don't know, 10, say, and I've added 10 to all of these numbers. Now, say I didn't mean 10, I meant 100. Now, if I reevaluate this percent is referring to the last value in the kernel. So it's going to add 100 to all of these. And what I really meant is this. And so now we have what we're calling smart percents. And so now if I do the same thing, I say percent, plus 10, that's fine. And then I said, no, I meant 100, and I evaluate this again. It added 100 to these numbers because this is no longer linking to the last thing in the kernel or a specific down value of out, I guess, in the kernel. It's linking positionally to an output cell and an input cell. So just as a reminder, that's
can you just type percent again on a new line?
Sure.
Type a space.
To be clear, this is not the proposal for how
insertion.
one would enter percent. It is a convenience that Noah's set up so that he doesn't have to futz around in the demo.
Yeah, I've got the insertion mode on like the most aggressive, just for this.
There's an option I added, and we'll have to probably decide on the default option, of course, but that's the aggressive version. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, there's an option called percent reference creation. But yeah, I've got a whole section on insertion. So
I mean, other than the fact that the actual raw thing that you get here looks incredibly technical and complicated, there's a certain real niceness to the fact that it automatically does that linking.
Well, you're not thinking through all the cases, though.
Okay.
For example, the case which I know you don't do, and you're not so happy about it when people do it, but people do multi-line inputs, and the percent may have referred to the previous line in the same input, which we definitely do not want a replacement for.
Yeah, so
and of course, I mean, if they're actively editing, literally the thing could change the number of inputs as they're editing, and having locked it in at the time of typing, I think probably is too aggressive.
Okay.
I mean, at least, unless you've made a decision that might come through a menu or a keyboard shortcut, obviously, but yeah.
So I would agree with John as well on that as well, but it is possible that I could adjust for that line number. But as John says, as the line numbers change, that might get sort of messed up.
Well, there are other things we could play with, like percent, which people use a little less often. We could try and start doing things where it defaults differently by the time you get to double percent.
Yeah, we have certainly talked about percent and triple percent and so on. I mean, I have to say, I'm curious to hear your experience, but I have to say, I see percent really rarely in code.
I certainly use it. I don't think I use triple percent, but I use double quite often. But I would be perfectly happy if double suddenly started defaulting to something different and allowed me to get back to the behavior I wanted. Because by the time I'm using double percent, it's more tenuous what the heck I'm talking about. But let's go on with this review. This insertion thing is super important, but let's go on with the rest of the review.
Okay, depending on what the time is, then I might bump this up. We'll see how we go. So basically, if we pick up from where we left off last time, which was so these these smart percents, they have 3 links, right? So one is a link to the kernel. So is the down value about there? One is the input cell and one is the output cell. And just, all the different combinations of those states, of the classes of those links gives you 8 states. And, for the sake of presenting a simple UX, we reduce this down to 4. So this column is what you saw last time, the 0.3. And if you recall in the meeting, we started coming up with an alternative appearance with these icons, where this was meant to represent a stack of cells, and this stack is reflecting the sort of the state here. Oh, actually, you can't see. So I'm gonna have to zoom out slightly to get all this in. Is that reasonable? Can you see that?
I can see that, but I'm not. Yeah.
Oh, and also you asked for a slightly different styling of the out label to kind of diminish it a bit. Now, actually, I think putting the percent is quite nice. It compactifies the whole thing, and it is actually what you typed. You would have typed a percent to get here. Sorry, let's try 1.15. There we go. That'll do. Right.
Okay.
So that's a slight iteration.
I'm not wild about that for the following reason. I think it just is too much symbolism. It's too obscure. I like the directness of out such and such.
Well, but as Noah says, I mean, at least by any mechanism that we've presently considered, the only way to get this is if you know that percent is a thing. So we've already selected out people who don't know what percent is.
Yeah.
At least for authoring purposes. You could argue for reading purposes it might be different, but for authoring purposes, we've definitively selected out people who don't know what percent is. I think
that looks deeply hieroglyphic. I mean, it's not helped by the fact that those braces are very dark black, which I don't like. I mean,
that's the focus, though. That's the bit that matters. In the sense that you're linking to the content, or I suppose you're linking to the cell, and the content is the indication of the cell, I guess. But so there's also this idea where you're using a link icon, which I think we kind of
an interesting idea.
Yeah, and perhaps this really does look quite hieroglyphic. Then we've got the link percent number. But maybe
I think that's ridiculously hieroglyphic. But I agree that column there, link icon without, is quite nice.
Okay.
I quite like that one. I think that one is clearer and less hieroglyphic and so on. I like the fact that the linking thing is sort of a piece of metadata on the outside rather than part of the hieroglyphic sequence.
Right. Great. Okay. Well, we'll use this as our sort of working one then.
I'm not sure. The broken link is a little bit graphic.
Yes, there was a discussion as to whether that was slightly too whimsical. And it should say
we had an amusing discussion about whether something was actively, flying across the room as you hear the ping,
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I'm sure, graphic design will be able to improve on these icons, I'm sure. Actually, I've currently got the percent display set up, but I can change that so we've got the one that you like. Right. There we go. Yeah. Okay.
One day, after all these years, somebody should write a case study on using our language as a user interface development environment, as a creation tool for user interfaces. Anyway, side comment.
Actually, John and I talked about that as a tech conference presentation, but I didn't have time to do it last year. But we've discussed that.
Right. Might be an interesting class for through Wolfram U or something. Anyway, separate topic. Okay.
Okay, great. So we're going with this column for now. And I guess the other thing just to say here is that obviously the link to the kernel is important because that's the kind of the highest fidelity representation we have. And what we really care about
in item 3 there.
Yep.
Yeah, down to the no. I meant the third row.
Row 3. Yeah.
Row 3.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Row 3.
Yep.
I'm not believing in that the reddened out there. I think it should redden I think it should be more framed red rather than just the out being red.
Fair. Let me show you this in. Oh, of course, I removed that slide. Okay, hang on. I'm gonna have to go into a previous version. Hang on. Right, 0.2 here. The reason I didn't include this time is because I'm still kind of struggling to get a nice design for this. But the idea is that if you have stale references, right? So in other words, the cells, the linked cells are in the notebook, but the session has been restarted or whatever, and you attempt to evaluate, then this is the flow that we're proposing. So you attempt to evaluate, these turn into whatever state, and they prevent the evaluation from happening. However, a message is thrown that basically lists out all these things, saying that they don't yet have a value, and you can either go to the input cell to evaluate them and put a value in the kernel, or you can retry the evaluation using, assuming the output cell exists, by reading in those boxes and essentially doing to expression on them. So it's not the reddening here is not the only indication that something went wrong here or the evaluation was prevented. We will have a message as well, but we'll list all of these out.
Why isn't pinking the right thing to do for those guys?
You mean like a pink background, red?
Yeah.
Right. In general, I didn't want these to look like pink boxes because
and I think that's a mixed message because we don't generally pink on inputs. We pink on outputs.
Yeah, fair point.
I mean, what I just said isn't a strictly true statement, but it's a generally true statement.
Can you show me that table again?
Furthermore, the outputs, of course, are you really have to regenerate them. Whereas this, they're sort of rescuable in some sense. Whereas the pink box things it's hard to work with. You generally regenerate them.
And also, actually, here, this red frame is it's part of the broken link, right? So in a sense, we're saying that the sort of the decoration around the content is referring to the link to the cells, whereas this really is like a kernel value that's absent. I suppose we could redden out of one and the frame.
Yeah, that might help. But I also think whatever your metaphor is for the link being broken, which I think has to be a better iconography than that weird kind of POW type thing that you have right now. Whatever
Sure.
that, if that was an X, for example, you could X through the out one. If you can transport the iconography from the breaking of the link to the breaking of the out connection, that would be nice.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can't put an X through that link thing. What's another?
Why? What? But we could have the broken lane, and we could. Yeah, we could still put an X through the out label. I mean, just because it's not the same motif, I don't think is the end of the world.
Yeah, it'd be nice if those icons, matched in some way. But I'm kind of wondering. Let's see.
I think the reason why the natural, so it might not be exactly this icon that I've made, but a broken link is kind of, I think it makes sense for this, right? It's a very natural state, given that
I'm just doing a web search for broken link icons.
Yeah, I exactly did that. So no one might want to pull one up and actually just do broken link and pull up the images.
Sure.
And take a look. Yeah.
Okay, I'm kind of liking one that has an X. I don't know what, you probably have a different thing, but just scroll down through those a bit more. Yeah, I mean, one like that one that at the fourth element of the first row on the screen right now.
This one.
Yeah, but there are better things like that where you have that line in the middle is solid.
Sure.
I don't think these POW things make sense.
I might worry that especially at the size we're drawing it might look a bit like a percent actually. But
yeah,
but we can try it. But presumably, I mean, the icon that I have, it would still look like a broken link if you didn't have. Right. I mean, if we just get rid of those. Oops, no, come on. Get rid of the background. Right, what does that look like? Small.
Well, a bit incomprehensible.
It is, yeah.
I mean, I think the only way to do that with that is just to have the two links be separate circles, not connected, so to speak.
Sure.
I think that
yeah,
might
okay.
work.
We can. Does
Jeremy have an opinion?
I don't have a solution. I was thinking adding a question mark or an exclam could help. As more of a warning.
Possibly just unlinking the links might be. We should try just unlinking the links. It might work. Red and unlinking the links.
Sure.
Now, I'm a little bit confused by the fact that there is a link icon on row 3. Why is that? Because you're still linking to you know that you're linking to the cell, you just don't have the outline.
Correct.
Yes.
The kernel value. Yeah.
Okay.
Because really, this state is sort of expected to go back to this state, right? When you reevaluate the notebook.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Noah, how do you get to the input of that grade box? Is there some UI to get there?
Yeah. So 1+1%. There's a menu. If you click on the menu, then you can go.
But when it's gray, when it's in the state of row 3.
That still works. Because if I click the kernel. Because that link is just a spatial one. It doesn't really care if the kernel is there or not.
Mm-hmm.
You might reevaluate it to see it reinflate to just show you. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Would it make sense to add a reevaluate input in that menu?
Oh.
That's
maybe.
It'll just go blue without jumping. I mean, ideally, it wouldn't jump either. It would just work.
There's the danger.
I'd be worried about evaluating stuff that's potentially off screen. I think the safer thing to do is take you to the input. You can see it and orientate yourself in the notebook and then evaluate it.
Okay. So yeah, no, do it A equals 1 above that, and then 1 plus A, and then you still get 2. You'd get if you did the A equals 1, and then you evaluate that, and then 1 plus 1, evaluate that, and then do a % reference to that, quit the kernel, and if it just evaluated 1 plus A, sorry, 1 plus A, N3 should be 1 plus A, yeah.
Yeah,
sure. And so of course, if you just evaluated N4 again, and you hadn't evaluated N2, you wouldn't sort of recreate the same state. So evaluating the thing might be a bit dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see what you're saying. In other words, there may well be sort of a chain of dependencies.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why you really do want to go and look at the input cell, I would say.
Okay. So
sorry.
Sorry, just a second. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's see, what was next here?
So, well, yeah. I guess just to summarize, it sounds like we're closer. We're much closer than we were last time, and there's just some tweaking to do with these icons.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Okay. So, what is the representation of these things in the kernel? This is clearly like a typeset form of is it an out expression? So the first argument would be a cell object, and then the second would be essentially like an offset index if you've got like, like a multi-line
interesting idea.
input. Yeah, and so if if the kernel value out of n was defined by the linked input cell, then this just evaluates 2 out of n.
What do you mean was defined by the linked input cell? So
well, because the line numbers might not match up to what they were in the last session.
Should it evaluate to out of n, or should it evaluate to the expression that is the value of out of n?
Well, so when we were talking about this, Noah, we were still in the mode of being more likely to, pull in the output boxes. Now that we're never doing that, the only time when this would be required is cases where we wouldn't evaluate anyway.
Well, so there's a wrinkle there. We sometimes get the output boxes when we don't have the kernel, right? Yeah. When we're doing like insertion or something else like that. But no, actually for evaluation, no, you're right. For evaluation, no, sorry.
Yeah. So actually, yeah, this was an earlier design, which I think isn't necessary anymore. I think we can now just say out of in. Of course, in might float as the notebook, updates, but that's okay. Maybe out of in isn't a problem. We could still, have this for, kind of, user reference, but it wouldn't be necessary to actually do this ourselves.
I'm slightly confused.
So you're saying that,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask. So this, you're saying actually for now this can just be a template box, and that's fine.
I'm saying yes, that it would literally evaluate as out of in for whatever the value of in is, and there's in an earlier version.
I'm trying to decode your
proposal,
accent, John. You're saying out of n, the number n for November, so to speak.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Fine.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So actually, yeah, this was a part of the proposal which came from an earlier version of this whole thing, which we kind of didn't properly re-review. And now that I'm looking at it, I think out of in is fine.
Okay.
Okay. So that will always agree with the thing that's in the out of whatever in the blue thing. That number will always agree.
At the time that it was evaluated, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Convert to raw input form.
Yes. So
that's what we just discussed.
So
right?
This is also well, not. Yes, I suppose it is, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's just the first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
In which case, I mean, like any other input form stuff, you're going to lose some stuff, and in this case, you'll lose the smart reference. That's okay. That's what raw input form does.
Yes. You don't want the smart reference in input form because that's a creature of notebooks. An input form is not.
Yeah.
Correct.
Like when you copy paste to email, you don't want that.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, so there's a related feature that I think would be nice to add, and I can't remember if we touched on this last time or not, but and in fact, it's actually turned on in this build. Usually a stale in or out label will say, in of dot. It won't actually display the line number that corresponds to the line in the previous session. If we added the numbers back in as they are here, then as I've said, in most cases at least, you can ambiguously see which smart percent referred to which output. And of course, if they were bullets, can
I suggest a compromise? Can I suggest that we put an icon before or after the 52 there? Because I think it's really confusing to have, the sequence. If we put like a little circle before the 52 or some such other thing, or perhaps a proto dot, so to speak, before the 52. Yeah, I mean
that seems to be more confusing to me. I mean, is the issue that the contrast between the sort of the live version and the stale version not enough?
Maybe. I mean, the thing that's confusing me Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, if that's the case, then I think that's something that can be solved with, maybe a lighter gray or a smaller font or something. But I don't know, introducing
what about the possibility of having, maybe this is crazy, a dotted line through the center of the dead ones?
I worry about
sort of
readability, but it's not crazy. Yeah. And then obviously these would reflect that. These would also have the dotted line in the percent blobs. Yeah.
So in other words, you get an idea of what it was, but it's not claiming it's current in any way.
Yeah.
Jeremy, what do you think about that?
Are we saying dotted line only through linked in-outs that have become stale, or all in-outs?
All stale in-outs.
So we're getting rid of the dot, the old stale version with dots.
See, look, there's another thing. Okay, if I'm showing, no, you know what? This is not going to work. If I'm showing an example where I just want to say it's in, it's out, it's in, it's out, I don't want to see all this crud.
No, I mean, maybe it's triggered only when a cell is, linked to a percent. Otherwise, I think the dots are great.
Yeah, so you understand. I mean, I agree with that. I think if a cell has been linked to, then number it. Otherwise, don't.
Yep.
I think that's going to be even more confusing, though, because it's not going to be obvious why some of these have numbers and some of them don't.
Well, I mean, actually, it's very useful to know which ones have numbers, because those are the ones where if you delete it, something will say dead cell.
True, but what I'm saying is that that's not necessarily clear that that's what it means, right? I mean, it's yeah. I mean,
but it only shows up for people using a percent, right? Otherwise, if you don't use percent, we don't have to bring back line numbers for stale.
Yeah, you know what? It's not going to work to bring back line numbers. There are just too many examples where people want to show kind of this is what happened, and you don't want some random, it was line 273 that I did that on.
Okay.
But
okay, so for that, so for this, it means that if you open up a notebook in a new session, you don't necessarily know which percent blob referred to which output.
So you may recall, Noah, that I had pitched the idea at one point of having some kind of visible backlinks for any cell that's been referenced, and we didn't really pursue that further. But
do you mean
there might be something we can do?
Do you mean or do you mean something that's permanently displayed?
A thing which can pop up to, because of course the cell could be backlinked in multiple places. I don't think we need one widget for every place that it's been backlinked to, but we can just have one thing that says it is backlinked, and then clicking it can have a pop-up menu that allows you to navigate to the backlinks.
And so just to be clear though, Stephen, you want the line numbers on the things that are linked, right? You still want those, or not even those?
Well, that's what we're talking about. So here's a suggestion, guys. Here's a suggestion. It's in a blob, but if there is a backlink to that thing, the blob has a leg associated with it, and the blob on hover would give its number. And possibly it's backlink information.
Ooh, what if it's a link instead of a blob? A little link icon instead of a blob for linked.
That's an interesting idea.
So right now, when we look at the out for right there, what will it say inside the out for the link? Just below Noah, and the actual and the percent reference right in there. It won't be out for. It'll be out blob. It'll be out.
No. We're talking about what shows up as the cell label.
Okay, so it'll still be out for in the actual link, but the cell label won't match that. It'll be something different.
Well, I think if you hover over it, go ahead.
Well, I'm now questioning the utility. If we're not going to have these numbers, the stale line numbers, then I'm kind of questioning the utility of having them in here as well. Okay, actually, no. You want them in here because you don't want this to change size, right? You don't want this to change width. And if you add any kind of icon in here, as soon as this thing reinflates, it could have been like a 3-digit number or something. and suddenly your outputs are kind of jiggling around. So I think we would have to keep the numbers in here.
Look, the problem is it could be 6 sessions ago. You could have out 4s. You could have a whole history of out 4s. Right? And one of these things is like, I just don't get it. I think the only way to do this would be some kind of weird hash color blob. You know what I'm saying? Where you can match it up.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Look, I think it's a very weird action at a distance to have a thing where it's an out 7, an out blob. I wish we could have a very subtle hint that would not be confusing to people who just saw, out a blob. A very subtle hint that it's linked. Hence my statement about what if you just give it a stem? It's a blob with a stem.
Let's
like a lollipop almost. You mean literally a line coming down?
Yes, okay. That's what I mean.
All right.
But hang on. What about the suggestion of having a link icon in there? Right. So the ones that aren't linked would just be in of blob and out of blob. Of a disk.
Actually, the link icon is not such a bad suggestion, right?
Yeah.
It can be made nice and simple.
Yeah.
The only thing is that is a forward link, whereas a link icon in the other place is a backward link.
In other words, I'm a little bit worried about that too, and I was just looking to see if there's any sort of kind of standard notion of backlink iconography, but I'm not finding anything that's totally convincing.
I think yeah, okay.
It's somewhat clear from the context which direction it's going, of course, but so you might not need to.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. If what you mostly see is I've got a bunch of in-out lines, and I'm just looking at this thing. I've never seen this kind of system before, and I see one of them has a weird little link in it. I'm totally confused. That's why I think that what we want is a piece of iconography that the cognoscenti will notice, and nobody else will even bat an eye. It'll just look like a speck of dust.
Sure. And so if we have an icon there, instead of where it says N4 where it's gray, we have N4 with some little iconography link, and you want
no, it wouldn't be a number. It would be just like it is today in a blob.
Right, but that blob is changed to a link icon, right?
No. What I'm saying is the link icon raises too many questions. Okay, in my opinion, it's important that when somebody sees a notebook the first time and it happens to have these weird forward links in it, it's like, if you're a cognoscenti, right? If you're an aficionado, whatever word you want to use, then you can see, oh, it's a lollipop, not a dot. It must be linked. And then you will think to hover and it'll show you where it's linked to and so on. But if you're not a cognoscenti, you just ignore it. Just say, oh, I don't know what that is, but it looks like a blob.
Well,
I can actually see that working because I like, the little symbols at the top of cell brackets.
Yes.
Like it's good because I know this is a text cell because I know to look here and that I didn't turn this into an input cell. So yeah, I can see that working in this context.
Right. It's for the cognoscenti, but it's not for other people.
So, for example, it could be, something that instead of looking like static text, it looks a bit control-ish. Like if you were to click on it, it would do something.
I really think it should be subtle.
Have a slightly
become a little down arrowy type thing,
pop-up-y type frame.
What about a down arrowy kind of thing, around the blob with a little, little piece coming down below it? That would be my suggestion. A little V-like thing coming down below the blob. Okay, I think we should move on. That's my suggestion for the iconography. Sure. Maybe we can try and get.
We can come up with a load of different options and bring them to UX design.
Okay.
Okay. So right. Okay. So we're deciding not to do this, but there's stuff that needs to be done. So representing. Oh, right. Okay. This is getting at how do we represent the contents of the cell? And again, I think we touched on this last time, but we didn't really go through it properly. The point being is that I'm not using what Iconize uses, because I think we can do a slightly better job in this context. However, we may also want to use what I've done here for Iconize if we prefer it.
So what's the 200 doing up at the top there?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
that's a bug. There we go.
Okay.
Right. So basically, we fall back to the head of whatever the expression is if it doesn't match one of these specific cases, right? So for example, something like it's cell object, it's a cell object, elided.
Okay, so Iconize does one thing for this, and you think you've got an uptick from that.
Yeah, I just think this looks a bit. Yeah, I think this gives a better indication of what's actually there.
I don't think we took. I don't think we put a lot of effort into the Iconize algorithm. So if you've improved it, then great.
Okay, cool. Okay. I guess, okay, one thing to ask is, do we want to do anything special for image and graphics? Maybe include a little icon.
Yes, I think so. I think that'll be nice. And I think it'd be nice for Iconize as well.
Sure. Okay. So yes, let's do
that. Fixed icons, right?
Yeah, fixed icons.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Not like a miniature version of the actual thing. I think that would probably be too expensive. Great. Okay, and actually, I guess the other general thing is that I'm eliding stuff with these ellipses. It looks a bit odd, but I think it's sort of functionally quite good. What do you think? Are you happy with the ellipses or not? You can kind of see a few different examples.
What else? What else could you do?
Well, you could display the whole thing.
No, but that's no.
Or you could.
Yeah.
Sure. Or you could just display the head. I guess if it's too long, you could just say, well, integer. In this case, or complex. Okay. Okay. Cool. Right. Okay. So menu and click behavior. So again, last time you asked for.
Yeah. It should be noted, by the way, if you do like right now, if you do Iconize of in of pi, 500, you get well, Noah will show us. It's kind of unsatisfactory.
That's unsatisfactory. Okay, listen. The thing I'm most concerned about here is I'm developing a notebook interactively, and I want to understand this roll-up behavior where when I type %, I'm actually pulling in the expression, for example, or I'm more seriously, how I make sure. I mean, I'd love it to be the case that if I copy paste a thing that has a dependence based on the % thing, that when I copy paste it, it warns me, oh, whoops, if you copy paste this alone, you won't have the dependency.
Oh my gosh. We're not talking dialog boxes, I hope. No dialog boxes in clipboard operations.
Fair enough. But what about just picking them all up and pasting them all together?
Sorry, sorry, I'm not understanding your.
Okay, I've got a thing which has a smart %. Mm-hmm. Okay, I copy paste that line, that input line. It's got a smart % in it. Mm-hmm. I know perfectly well that to run that smart %, I have dependencies that go backwards.
Mm-hmm. You mean you for purposes of this illustration, you mean pasting inside the same notebook or pasting into a different environment?
Well, pasting into another notebook, let's say.
Okay.
Where I fully imagine that other notebook will be run independent of the notebook I'm currently running.
Mm-hmm. Well, just to remind you, and the similar, really, I think the situation of pasting into another notebook looks a lot like, looks a lot like pasting into an email or any other application.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to say that we have a broken. It just enters the broken state. But you're saying that actually it just turns into out of, like literally, OUT of a number.
I thought Stephen was suggesting to do automatic roll up on copy for.
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
Well, roll up is a different sort of operation. Maybe because roll up is rolling up inputs. But like pasting to another notebook, you could do an iconized output, so it's now kind of frozen in place.
That'd be nice. I'd love that.
So just to point this out, this was an internal discussion. Should we allow cross notebook linking? And we've got the technology to allow it, but that it was decided, sort of, John and everything advocated strongly for not allowing cross notebook linking.
I think it's pretty confusing. I love the idea of iconizing by default. In other words, what happens when you transport the smart percent to another notebook is that it iconizes.
And then, of course, if you're copying, to text editor, email, or whatever, then of course there's no iconizing option, so it's just the actual value of the thing.
I think so.
Yeah.
So actually, okay. So what would that look like? Right. So I mean, if you have, okay, what looks pretty similar? Oh, actually, presumably, like image, right? Iconize. Oh no, but we're gonna have an icon.
Yeah, I mean, the automatic iconization might have a bespoke label. That's something we could consider, or it might just be as if you iconize that expression, and we could go either way.
I guess I just want to make sure that the contrast between the two is sort of, you're going to notice it.
Between what and what? Sorry.
Well, I mean, so say this is what it looks like in the source notebook, and then you copied and pasted it into a new notebook, and it turns into this. I guess I'm just checking. Are we happy with this transition?
I think it's sort of like pretty nice. I think it's pretty nice because it's one thing is it's based on a link, and when you disembody it, it just picks up the actual data. Now, what I'm worried about is when you copy into email and you copy a graphic, for example, into email, that I can imagine a situation in which you want to copy just the percent sign because you're trying to send somebody, hey, do this thing, and it just has a percent in it. And then pretty soon you have this giant graphic that came out in your, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, and I think that maybe comes down to when should the percent reference have been inserted in the first place.
Fair enough. But let's go. By the way, I'm still not liking these black braces, these very dark braces. I'm still not liking that.
Okay, so
I mean, but also we're not really seeing this in context, right? So I don't know.
Part of what bothers me is that those braces are so black compared to the dots, which are really quite light, just because they don't have as much weight. Are those braces bold?
Yeah, I mean they're kind of meant to match, I
think if they were not bold, it would help.
What if they match the weight and size of, which actually was the intention, but I've kind of failed a bit, of the rest of the input text? So in other words,
probably
they're just
okay.
input style.
I would say don't bold them. I think they just look unbalanced because of the dots. Because you're used to seeing things of similar weight, but those ellipses are lighter weight.
Yeah. Fair.
Okay. So, are we just talking about curly braces here? Because I mean, the same thing is being done for function heads, for example.
I know.
And
I don't think.
Are you talking a special rule?
No,
for
I'm not.
Curly braces
no, I'm
versus
not.
Function heads?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm talking about just don't bold it ever.
Okay.
I think.
And actually, is it right that this, given that this will appear in input, should this be, the input font, the monospaced code font?
That isn't what we've done in boxes in general. In boxes, we have proportional fonts. It just doesn't look right. It's just too heavy. I think it should be non-bold text font.
Okay. Actually, you can see what that looks like.
I really want to concentrate on this thing about what the smart percent really does. So, in other words,
sure.
And I want to concentrate on the input method.
Sure.
So let's talk about it.
Sure. So you can insert one of these manually by escape God, it's hard to say, is supported. You can do %n, you can do %%, etc. But I imagine the kind of principal way is using the completion raft, right? So when you type %, you get this completion raft, and this is listing, all of the percents that are going to correspond to, an in-out pair, or I guess actually just an input cell, because that's what you really need. They're sort of sorted in, reverse chronological order, we did talk about positional ordering, given that they're positional links, but we kind of decided that it would just be too confusing to understand what's going on.
Hold on, I'm confused. I'm confused already. If you type a single %, you kind of know what you're trying to refer to, don't you?
And it's right there at the top. It's right there at the top.
Yeah. So
why do you have anything else in there? It's either that or it's a non-linked
Stephen, you have to type a single % to type any % form. You are thinking as if we know they're only typing a single %, but we don't know that yet.
Yeah, I understand, but there's a meaning to %. Okay.
Yeah, and assuming %72 was so in this example, %72 would have been the last thing evaluated.
Yes, but what I'm suggesting is, okay, I've got a suggestion here. I think this pull down should allow you right then and there to put the whole expression in there, if you want to.
Yeah, we did. Hang on, where's the tabbed? Right, so there was a tabbed version of this. One of the reasons we didn't really actually consider this was because we wanted something simple to implement.
Yeah, but also, I don't understand why you want this menu of previous %. Why is that useful?
Oh, I see. Sorry, you're saying that the actual content of this would be like %72 and then like literal 72, iconized literal.
Yeah.
Well, but you don't find John's argument convincing that. Well,
no.
You.
Okay. So if I type an I should get a completion menu that only has I and no other symbols that begin with I.
I understand that argument. I understand that argument.
Yeah.
I don't believe it. I think that it's very simple to type these numbers, 72, whatever else it is. Okay, look, I admit there are cases where I would have liked this.
Yeah, but that means that this wouldn't work.
Part of it is not just the simplicity; it's the immediate visualization.
Yeah, okay. I admit that I would have liked this a number of times. However, what I would like more is the ability to take what I'm probably talking about, which is the genuine % thing, and replace it with an icon, with an iconize. That's a super useful thing. Now, maybe we could get best of both worlds by having 3, history things and then an iconize, for example.
Or you.
It comes down to, are we putting the the aircraft, panel in front of people, or are we, or are we doing something simpler? And if you say you want something simpler, why are we doing % reference in the first place?
I don't understand. I just want, okay, look, as a practical user of this, there are cases in which I want to go backwards several steps. And it's nice to be able to see, most likely, most of the time, I'm going to want to go back more than 5 steps. Oh, what was that thing that I had way up in my notebook? For example, one thing that's annoying right now, maybe it's possible and I didn't know it all these years, is I never go up and copy out 72. I always retype it. In other words, if I had to scroll way up in my notebook, I don't even know if it's possible. I just remember the line number and I type it as %72 down below.
You mean copy the actual label itself?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and to be clear, what Noah hasn't shown yet is that if you start typing a number, it's going to update that menu accordingly.
Yeah, I get it. The thing that seems to me very useful to have in addition to these things is just the iconized version of line 72. I guess that's my only suggestion. Just like we have other cases where there's an additional action in addition to pure autocomplete.
I can imagine that if we had such a thing, yeah. I mean, okay, you could have pairs of items, I guess. Right?
No. It's we don't need that. It's not necessary. It's like the most recent thing, iconize it. It at least gives you the idea of iconization. Because if I then type %75, then I would get the %75 smart link and the %75 iconization. So I can always get to those things by, if I only offer an iconization for the top choice in the autocomplete, that's okay. I think it should go %70, out 72 there as a maybe it's %72 because it's a completion, right?
Yeah.
With and then in that, then right below the iconized version of that, then there's other there's other things that you can
Sure.
get.
No, I get the proposal. Yeah, I'll mock it up.
Okay, so then
if you just added a vertical bar, you could just put it on the right-hand side with just an icon, in a tooltip.
Well, but that was but then that was the difficulty of, well, how do you, if you want to get there with just the keyboard, presumably it would be tab, but how do you show that? And that's why I kind of ended up with the tabs at the top.
You can use arrow keys in that way, but it's kind of more confusing to do so if you're doing it in 2 dimensions.
Yeah,
I think it should be a line down below that. I think we don't usually have that. Usually when we have things on the right-hand side, they open something else, like at the I menu and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can imagine it having some kind of indent or some kind of icon to kind of.
Yeah,
so in other words, it wouldn't look too dissimilar from this menu, right?
Right. And possibly in the end, we decide that the iconize wants to be the top entry. I don't know. Maybe that's the top entry, but the selected entry is the second entry, or is that too crazy?
I'd have to think about it.
Okay, that's to be thought about. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, there you've actually got. Well, okay, maybe that works. Maybe that exact iconography works. You have %72 at the top, then you have a hooky thing like that, and then you show the iconized version, and then you keep going on the menu, %71, etc.
Yeah, I can see that working. I think actually, especially if you literally drew in the
icon picture.
Yeah. Is that an issue from an implementation point of view?
No, that can be
done.
Okay, cool. Okay. So yeah, hang on. So the next point was going to be, if you type in multiple percents, then this drops down. So what does that mean? Yeah, that would still work for us, I guess. It would just drop down to.
And so the next question is, if you type anything that makes it more specific beyond the first percent, do we continue to offer an iconized option in the second slot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So consistently, whatever the best match is.
I don't understand what that. If you type %%, I don't want to see the thing that I would have got with a single percent. Do I? I mean, I committed to %%. Just like if I type PLO, I don't want to see things that came from PLA.
Yeah, that's fair. So in other words, this would just be 71, 70, 69, 68, 67. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Oh yeah, and then it's very natural to put the iconized version. Yes, okay, that's
I wasn't actually aware of that. That's how I've actually implemented in my prototype right now that I've got. It dropped it out. The 72 doesn't appear once you've got the %%. Yep.
Okay.
And then, sorry, John, actually, I didn't include this, but John, you wanted to mention something about if you type a number.
Well, yeah. So like in this case, if you type in %6, then it drops all of the 70s and it starts with 69 and going backwards.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So the point was that it's not fuzzy matching on numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically, it continues to consistently show the most recent in time match that matches what you actually typed.
Okay. Question: Is there any sense in having a right-hand column effectively to this autocomplete that allows you to jump to the cell. Some kind of link.
I mean, as soon as you paste, you have a thing you can click that jumps you to the cell. So it's not clear to me that that adds anything here. But having been said, if the cell is on screen,
yeah,
there might be a visual effect if the cell happens to be on screen.
Yeah, if it happens to be on screen.
Yeah.
No, I had another idea.
We have actually, okay, there's a bug here. This is proto build, so maybe that's expected. But you know, in this cell style insertion menu, when you hover over a style, you get an attached cell to the right, which is at the moment too small, that gives you a preview of what that cell would look like.
That'd be lovely.
One could imagine
that would be magnificent. That would be magnificent.
Okay, so same question: is that possible?
It would be magnificent, but there are. I'm concerned that it's very easy to walk yourself into, you know, it just hanging because it was unable to do it for a certain, you know, output.
Is there not a heuristic we could use that determines if the output is simple?
Well, we can try.
Right, that's for Jason.
And there may be holes in
generate
that.
Magnificence.
Look, and also
presumably it doesn't show the preview.
Sorry, I didn't catch what you said, Stephen.
I said, if we can set it up so worst case is it doesn't show the preview, then we're all good. If worst case is it hangs, then we're not all good.
Okay.
And presumably, like, so with this, I'm fairly sure this is happening synchronously. And so, you know, when I move the mouse from one to the other, it has to draw the thing before the front end is. Would it be okay if, you know, you move this, and if it does take a while to compute, that's fine, right? And it just takes a second to update. So. Is that acceptable?
Yes, yeah, I think that's perfectly acceptable. So long as it indicates which thing it's associated with. So long as that right-hand preview comes up with sort of a link.
Oh, it could grade down the previous version if it hasn't displayed the new one yet. I think that would probably be the natural thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, but also, the only point I'm making is it's got to make sure that it doesn't highlight on the left and still have the. Well, you're saying if it grays down, then that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, but implicitly here, we're agreeing that % on its own just does what it does, and everything is in the autocomplete.
Well, that's a question, right? So additional possibilities for insertion. There is an option that Jason's already put in, % reference creation. And so that would be the manual mode, what you've just described. There's on evaluation, which I think is the only really kind of viable one, or potentially viable, but, you know, well, I guess I could show you actually. On evaluation, right? So
you mean for the notebook?
Yeah. Thanks. Right. So yeah, this one, you know, %, I don't know, framed of %. Okay, this obviously doesn't make any sense, but right, I'm going to evaluate the cell, and then it changes.
What if you don't want it to change? Or is it, do you always, I don't understand. Do you ever want a raw naked %?
Well, so this can be smart enough that, Noah, if you type in 1 + 1, enter %.
I see.
And now it's not going to do the replacement. It knows better than to try to do that.
I see,
and this
because
is where
it knows that there's a
entry
previous line, but if you had a % on the first line in that multi-line input, it would still smartify it.
Yes.
Correct. And it also won't smartify it if that cell no longer exists. It only exists in the kernel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so if I delete that, and evaluate that. Oh, is that just that was a bug, right?
Try 1 + 1.
Yeah,
and then,
just more straightforward. Okay, so delete that cell, right? And then, oh no, because it cares about the input cell, right? Yeah.
Get rid of the input and then percent.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so hold on. If it does this on evaluation, what's the downside of that? It means if you wanted to do a ripple through where you change, I mean, okay, so here's a scenario. Type, 13 or something, and then evaluate it. Type percent plus 2 or something, evaluate it. Okay, now I go back and I change that 13 to a 15. Now reevaluate that. Now reevaluate the next line. Why did that work? Oh, because it was a cell. You know what? That's good. Yeah.
So,
okay, that's good. I mean, it feels very much like a spreadsheet type thing where you change that.
So Itai has made the claim to me that it is a workflow that he does sometimes where he will deliberately, use a percent, but then feed that percent from multiple input cells. And I believe him, but I also believe that that's a pretty darn rare workflow. And if we're going to do something as radical as this, we're definitely going to put this in the preferences dialog. So if someone absolutely hates it, it's an easy thing to turn off.
Right. So the case is
actually one.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say one wonders whether we want to potentially put some options to disable that or change the behavior of these in the menu. I mean, like we do that for the toolbar, right?
We're being too timid.
There could be a sub menu here. Okay.
What is that menu that you keep on showing there?
As in the content, or how did I get to it?
No,
I just clicked on
the content. Replace with. What does replace with do?
It's just all the different sort of options of output and input and whether you want that iconized.
Okay. What does roll up inputs do?
So if I get this right this time.
I mean, effectively, roll-up inputs is like replace with input, except it follows the chains all the way through.
No, well, let's take a look. See what it actually does.
I changed the thing, didn't I? Yeah.
What happened?
Hang on, let me try the. Okay, I've just made a mistake in my implementation, but yeah, there you go.
And what's the blue doing? If I evaluate that, it will de-blue, right? That's just a selection.
Oh, that's just
a selection.
That's a selection.
Yeah, so actually, maybe it would have been clear if in other words, if there was content around this, right, like 10, that's what we would have seen.
And delete that, and then just type escape % escape.
I deleted.
Why did that not work?
I don't think Noah has your latest changes, Jason.
Okay.
Why is anybody going to use escape % escape?
If they've got manual mode. And
it's a typing.
It's because if you know exactly what you're doing and you don't need any prompting, it's an easy way to say I just want to keep my hands on the keyboard and go straight through.
Okay. All right, now roll that up. Can I suggest? Could you go back to the menu, please? There.
Mm-hmm. This is so it should look like this, right?
Okay, but I think it shouldn't say roll up inputs. I think it's very confusing. I think you should say replace with rolled up inputs. Just like you say replace with is the replace with output, replace with rolled up inputs.
Yep.
Yep.
That's fair.
Do you want to say rolled up or combined? No, rolled up is better.
Guess
that's the nomenclature we use for the predictive
suggestions bar. Yeah,
I know.
Although it's not, it's not particularly
that
clear
weird little snail icon for rolled up stuff, don't we?
Yes.
We have a snail.
There it is.
Okay.
Guys sort of look like a rug rather than a snail.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it was just slowly walking.
I mean, they both kind of work.
Yeah. Okay, what else do we have to figure out here? I'm going to tell you that I'm a little concerned that these blue things look a bit heavy.
Yeah, I can see that. I'll just sort of say in my original prototype, I had it a very, very minimal, far too minimal. But I prefer, the minimal sort of thing. It does look a tiny bit heavy. It's hey, look at me, I'm a smart percent reference.
But
I think
we need contrast between that state and the disabled state or the unlinked state too.
Yeah, it's
listen, I think we should debold the
this.
link on the left. I'm beginning to recant my claim about percent, that this should just say %2, not out2. And that as we've simplified this thing, that becomes more viable.
And actually, well, I think it becomes more viable because we're not putting out numbers in stale cell labels. That was my real conviction for keeping out in there.
Okay, all right, fine. So I think maybe percentify that, bring down the weight of that link thing so that it's just kind of a footnotey link thing. And for goodness sake, let's debold the what's it called thing.
The content,
and then I think maybe it's reasonable. I think we've got to try it.
If you iconize a link blob, what happens? Does it just come back as a link blob?
No, it would be the convert to raw input behavior.
So effectively a roll up, or is that different?
Sorry, you mean if you actually select it and choose the iconize menu command?
No, if I just the iconize of percent.
Oh, but percent is already going to evaluate something. The smart percent is long gone by the time the iconize picks it up.
So is that effectively a roll up? Yeah.
That's nice.
But no, it's not a roll up. It's taking this. No, but this is coming from that plus is coming from the output.
Yeah,
but it's coming. But the whole point is that output is the rolled up thing.
Okay, sure, but it's not inserting the actual sort of
no, it's not
rolled up
inserting
inputs. Yeah.
I mean the point.
But I mean we have a very specific meaning of roll up, and I would say that this is not it.
Yeah. Outputs are always rolled up by default.
The point of rolling up is to roll up code. Not to roll up results.
Okay.
Yeah.
Results kind of already roll up.
That's
it's
nice.
just the way
it's a nice thing
work.
to do, to just say iconize that. Okay.
Actually, presumably the other thing is that you can just evaluate in place as well.
Yeah.
Right. But we've always been able to do that with percents.
Yes, this is true.
Okay, so the basic workflow here is, as a serious percent user who is infuriated by the fact that I have a percentified notebook and I save it and I bring it back and it no longer works, it will now work. Correct? That's what we're achieving with all this smart percent stuff.
Subject to edge cases, absolutely yes. Yep.
Yes. So this is kind of the biggest obstacle there, I would say. But yes.
I mean, if you evaluate
in the sense that
if you evaluate it out of order, it's going to stop you and it's going to tell you how to fix it.
Yeah.
And once you fix it that way, then that cell will replace itself. What will it do?
So when you say fix it that way, you mean by
reevaluating the input cell.
Well, this
then it goes back into the blue state.
Yeah.
With a new smart, with
whatever the updated number is. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in other words, 3 to 1 is probably going to be a very common thing.
Yes.
Now, one other thing to be aware of, which we haven't really talked about, is that, as these things become prevalent, we'll be making notebooks that that don't evaluate correctly and don't look correct when open in older versions that don't support this functionality.
What will it look like?
I mean, we can customize it a little bit, but it will, it will probably, it will have the whatever template name we give it. I mean, we could call it %reference or smart %, or we can customize that word, but it's
out reference. We should call it out reference something.
Okay.
And can I see what it would actually look like?
Yeah, hang on.
I just copy and paste one of those into
like
version 14.
Yeah. This is 13.3, but yeah, of course, copy and pasting would work. There we go.
So this is kind of the standard appearance of template boxes that don't have templates backing them.
Well, so long as we can have that name be something sensible, we're great here.
Sure, we can change the name to basically anything
that doesn't conflict with anything else. But
yeah.
What should that be?
I mean, we've been calling them smart %. I don't know if that.
Actually, speaking of that, the option names, Stephen, if you Command Shift O and put % in, did you have an opinion on those names? %reference creation, %reference allow absolute references. Did you want those to be what?
Well, I know with this question whether we're calling it %. I mean, I admit that I've been using this notion of % for like 40-something years by now because it was an SMP as well. So it's sort of an obvious thing to me, but I think for somebody in general, % is percentage points.
That being said,
so I mean, question number one is how we brand the feature. It affects how we. It also affects how we document it.
I think we should call it smart %, but shit, that doesn't. That's not really right because smart % would be things like people saying, "Oh, if I type 0.1, it'll come out as 10%," that kind of thing. Smart referencing, auto-referencing, smart auto-referencing.
Auto-reference is one of the words I thought. Yeah, I like those. Yep.
Which? Smart
auto-reference.
Yeah, auto-referencing
was my favorite of those.
But by using the link icon, do we want to work link into the name?
I see. History linking.
History linking, output cell linking.
Output linking. Automatic output linking.
Output linking is good too. Yep.
Output linking. Look at that preferences thing. Can it be output linking arrow?
That would be output link creation, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I think the automatic is unnecessary.
Yes, I agree. So output linking would be the name of the feature. Output link creation would be the thing there. And what's that absolute reference creation? What's that thing there?
So that right there allows to do escape %, 10 or something else like that. Do we allow those things to automatically go through and become smart references as well? Put a %.
No.
Yeah.
Well, same in evaluation.
Well, when it's inside escape, I don't think we need to control that for that though, because
yes, and John's right. But I guess if you do 1 plus %10, maybe you wanted it to be just %10, and you didn't want it to be smartified. And so we thought probably the default. It was raised, so I just put the option in. But
sorry. Yeah, you're right. So on evaluations, does that change or not?
Correct. And if you turn that off, it stays as 1 plus %10.
Can I see that again? Sorry, I thought you just had that. It's saying on evaluation. Sorry, go back to the.
Well,
right, but it's on evaluation whether you have you numbered the %, right? Are you referring to a specific line? And if you do that, we're saying, well, maybe you actually do mean out of 10.
But if it's percent, what do you mean? Is that a question? If it's pure percent without a number. So can you show me the name of that option again?
Sure, sorry. Let me
Absolute reference.
Sorry. Hang on. Okay.
Percent reference allowance. What's the alternative to absolute reference creation?
Relative reference creation, which is the default, just percent or percent or percent.
What do you mean? So it doesn't, but I don't understand. If we're saying output linking arrow on sometime, as soon as you do output linking, you're linking to an absolute output number, aren't you?
You're linking the relative reference input to an absolute output, correct? But that changes, of course. When you reevaluate that input, it will change to percent 17 or 18, or it goes on and it changes. We could drop this. We could even just allow it. This was an internal discussion, and so I just threw the option in. And then maybe this is too confusing.
Frankly,
I think we just take it out.
If you don't want smart percents, don't use smart percents. Period. End of story.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm good with that.
How do you not use a smart percent?
By selecting that thing saying none, where it says output linking arrow none.
So I think there are two sorts of controls that you might want. One is, do the percents just auto replace on evaluation as can be done. That's one thing you might want to turn on and off. The other thing you might want to turn on and off is, don't show me the completion menus even ever. I don't want to see the completion menus for it. I think those are the two semi-sensible controls.
Yep. I'd agree with turning the completion menu off. Yep.
Sorry, I spaced for a second. Could you repeat that?
Okay, so one control, which I think makes sense, is do you want to just kind of auto replace literal percents with percent references upon evaluation?
Okay.
Another control is for people who are just kind of annoyed by moving stuff on screen and such, and are hardcore old world. Don't even show the completion menus. They just don't want to see the completion menus. Just don't bother me with it because I never want to use it at all.
Yeah. Okay, but that's fine. But so output linking none. I mean.
Yeah. So for gating the option, those are the two gates, I think.
Well, so we've called it manual. None means you wouldn't even be allowed to do it. So in other words, escape percent would stop it.
Well, Jason, we'll figure out the right-hand sides later. I think we have enough to go on. Okay. And I think at this point, Stephen, tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I think, we build a bunch of this and then we come back through for one final pass.
I think so. I think this is looking really good. I got a comment, which is that I have a feeling we're going to want some kind of menu item in the end, in the evaluation menu, that some kind of ripple through that just gets rid of all percent referencing and just turns notebooks into some absolute thing somehow.
Maybe
just a prediction.
Yeah. So in other words, insert all with iconized output. That's
what I mean. So that
really, just sort of like a literalized dynamics, basically literalized by.
I mean, we've been kind of collecting a stable of these notebook-wide options that you've had interest in. Embed all kind of external information into the notebook, or minimize, the size of kind of large file footprint things in the notebook, that sort of thing. Maybe there's a theme there that we should think about.
Maybe there is a theme. Maybe what that is just like we have for individual things, like individual data sets or whatever. We have store in notebook, store in cloud, etc. That we should be able to have that globally for a notebook. In other words, here's the idea. The idea is you built up this notebook. You realize it's a 500 megabyte notebook. You say, oh my gosh, if I try and send that to somebody, it's going to blow up my mailer or whatever. And then you say, look, it's got a few large things in here that they may not care about. Let me put those in cloud files. Let me have something that puts those in cloud files. Then I've got this nice notebook that I can carry around. It's all very simple. And I've stored the big stuff in the cloud remotely, make the assets remote. which sort of dovetails with your remote asset thing in general, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are different options one might want to take. One might also want stuff entirely locally in notebooks.
In the compound bits of it, yeah.
Because maybe the cloud isn't available or whatever.
Yeah, as some composite thing in the directory or whatever else.
Yeah.
Yes, there are multiple options, and I think that put it in the same directory thing. As soon as we have that composite notebook structure, we will add that to the menus, to the menu for where to store a data set. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Why not?
I think we also need an interface though that kind of enumerates all of the relevant things in a notebook, right? So because I don't think we're going to be able to come up with an effective set of heuristics in general that kind of just guess what you want to do and what you consider to be key and big and whatever. So I think we're going to have some kind of notebook level dialogue that lists all of the things that aren't stored in the notebook, lists all the things that are above a certain size, and kind of gives you a control for each of them. Right, exactly. Yeah.
In fact, there are things like NCDU, which is the Unix tool, or there's DaisyDisk or something else it'll show you the usage of particular sort of files and structures. And you can imagine some sort of interface like that you'd be able to, spawn and go over the various bits and decide where you're going to, a nice, as we're talking about, a nice interface to do this.
Sounds reasonable to me. This is a great feature.
Okay, great.
Look forward to using it. And actually, just a few corner cases I just want to mention. Weird stuff like dialogues. That when you get into a subsession, I have no idea what % does in a subsession. Let me just poke at some weird cases. Okay, subsessions. No idea what % does. Anybody
so I think
know?
it's the same as if you quit currently as it's implemented. It's the same as if you quit the kernel or you switch to a different kernel. If you change the local evaluator, it did test this. If you change to a different local, it's like if you quit it. Yep.
Next, different evaluators.
Yep. So it'll switch to a different one. All of the other ones will go gray as they did, and if you switch back, they reinflate, and so you switch back.
Okay. So the smart percents gray out.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think this would be similar with another corner case, dollar history length. If something falls outside of your dollar history length, I think it just grays down.
Then it X's out basically.
Yeah.
Okay, question. If you have multiple kernels running around and you have percents in different kernels, any way to indicate which kernel it's associated with? If it's not the notebook's default kernel.
So
right now,
sorry, just so I understand, that would be like if you had a different evaluator set for a specific cell, say, is that how you'd get into that state?
No, you created a % using evaluator 1. And then
yes, that's exactly what Noah's saying. You have an evaluator that's I mean there are two possibilities. One is
historically you just changed the evaluator for the notebook after you've created a %.
Yes, one is you have cells or cell styles that have different evaluators. Another is you've actually changed the properties of the notebook, so its evaluator changed.
Right. So then what happens?
So currently it's treated as if it wasn't evaluated. If it's not evaluated in that kernel.
So it just grays.
It'll be linked to it, but it won't have a kernel value. Yeah, it'll be in state 3.
I understand that, but it might be a nice courtesy to say, oh, that's out one of this kernel. Maybe it's pointless. Just saying. I don't think that's a luxury item.
By the way, it should be pointed out that that right now the the in-out labels and their expiration state actually does track when you change the notebook's evaluator.
Yeah.
Okay, but it doesn't tell you that that other one is from that specific other evaluator. It merely tells you that it's an alien thing.
Yes, that is effectively what it's doing. Is it's saying it's alienness.
Right. Okay. Anything else to talk about? I think this is great.
I think there were some other bits and pieces, but because we kind of went out of order a bit, we can circle back around in UA and places like that, I think.
Yeah, we're late for everyone too. So yeah, it's a good place to end.
Good stuff. See you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye. All right.
Okay, cheers, guys. Bye. Bye.